And hello again. Good evening, everyone. My name is Franklin. I'm one of the two co-founders of NordCal SCI, also known as the Northern California Spinal Cord Injury Foundation. Welcome to tonight's presentation as part of the NordCal SCI Presents Virtual is the New Reality series. Very excited to host this conversation tonight, and I recognize many of my fellow quadriplegics on the call. So I'm sure this is going to resonate well, not only with you, but also really paraplegics as well, as you're going to hear Rachel talk about the importance of next function to your core. So a couple of typical housekeeping items. Everyone has been muted in order to eliminate any background distractions. We will have a Q&A session as we typically do at the tail end of tonight's presentation. So if you have any questions that you wish to pose to Rachel, there are two ways for you to do that. Either use the chat field on your screen, or alternatively, if you wish to email them to me, you can do so. The email address is info@nordcalsci.org. And we'll get to your questions at the tail end of the presentation. And then finally, as we do with all of our presentations, this is being recorded. And that way, if any of you need to jump off the presentation for any reason or otherwise, those that were not able to make it tonight, we will make this available to everyone who registered. It'll be in your inboxes by tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock Pacific time. So without further ado, let me go ahead and jump in and introduce tonight's presentation. Again, strong neck, strong core following a spinal cord injury. It's a workshop that Rachel Kahn, a nationally certified Pilates teacher, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and a movement teacher, is hosting tonight for us, and I'm very grateful to her. Rachel specializes in working with people with neurological deficits, particularly spinal cord injuries, and she is currently also pursuing her license for massage therapy. So Rachel, I want you to know that you have fans all over the world. I happen to know that there's someone from Taiwan and there's someone from Australia here with us tonight. So you're a celebrity, so take it away.
Oh my gosh, what an intro. So exciting.
No stress.
Uh, awesome. Cool. Well, hi everybody. Thank you for joining me tonight. I also, and Franklin, feel free to jump in here because right when we started this presentation, I noticed my camera looks good, but everybody else is a little freezy, which usually means the internet connection is kind of on my end. So if I glitch out at any point or I keep glitching out, I'll just change to my hotspot. So Franklin, just let me know if that
I
isn't
will.
working too well.
No, so far so
Okay,
good.
great. All righty. So let me share this presentation with you all. Okay, we'll just give this a second to load here.
Okay,
Great.
looks good.
Okay, awesome. Alrighty, so we are talking about the neck today. We're going to kind of start by talking about the neck. We're going to work our way down into the core, see how those two things are connected. And then for the second half of the hour, we'll move more into the movement portion. But I just want to give everybody just kind of a preface here. This is a big topic, and I've got a lot of things I want to cover tonight. So I'm going to kind of be moving at a good pace. Assuming that, so, you know, with whether you are a cervical or a thoracic or a lumbar spinal cord injury, there most likely has been during your trauma, during your injury, some trauma or whiplash of some sort to the neck. Tonight is really going to be focused on how do I safely strengthen that area? How do I safely mobilize that area? What does good neck posture even look like? But I just want to give like a really big emphasis that everyone's necks and injuries and everything you've got going on in your body are so different. So just taking that with a grain of salt that at the end of the presentation, I would love to take questions, but just keeping in mind that if I don't have you in front of me, it can be sometimes hard, especially to answer really delicate questions that have to do with the neck. So yeah, just kind of keeping that in mind. Okay, why is a strong neck important? This wonderful man on the right here is Joseph Pilates. For those of you that are maybe unfamiliar with the Pilates method, this guy is the founder of it all. He was born and raised in Germany and could go into a whole thing about good old Joe. But one of the things that he really worked on was head and neck strengthening. It was not only controversial back then, but head and neck strengthening even now are kind of slightly controversial. We think of the neck as a big no-no region, like this is delicate, we leave it alone, we can work below the neck, but we leave the neck alone. And I'm here to say that we can safely work the neck. So, well, here we go. So why is having a strong neck important? Well, it holds up this thing being your brain and the head. Remember, the head can be anywhere from 10 to 12 pounds. And as you lean forward, as that neck comes more and more forward, it exponentially gets heavier. So yes, we want good posture, but we also want a strong neck that's going to be able to hold our brain up. It connects everything. And with connecting everything, it has lots of tubes going through. And when I'm referring to tubes, I'm referring to your breathing tube, how you eat, your esophagus, so how the food and the water go down. I'm talking about your arteries, your veins, and obviously your nerves. So we have a lot of really important structures that need to be protected in this area. Having a strong neck can also help with balance, and that can be standing balance, that can be seated balance, that can look like balance when you're trying to transfer from a chair to a bed. It can help with all of those things. And lastly, it helps with vision, and I'm gonna get more into that later. Okay, is strengthening your neck even safe? Overarching theme is yes, it is safe, but we do wanna check in with a few things, and especially as you're moving through the movement part of tonight, just keeping a couple things in mind. Always listening to your body. If something doesn't feel right, if something is in pain, if you get nerving, tingling, fire, burny, icy sensation anywhere down the arms or the rest of the body, we probably want to stay away from that. Stay out of pain, that's a big one, especially for the neck. Hardware consideration. So for those of you that have cervical spinal cord injuries, whether you're fused or you have hardware in your neck and or both, the big thing with hardware considerations, let me just get that photo up there, is that anytime we are moving, and this goes whether you have a thoracic fusion or hardware and a lumbar, this is kind of the general rule for any fusion throughout your vertebra. When you're moving your neck, that movement, because it can't go to the parts of your spine that are fused together, that movement is going to dump into the vertebra above your hardware and below your hardware. So let's say you're fused C3 to C7. That means that all of the movement that you're doing strictly from your neck is really just going to stay in that C1 to C3, maybe a little bit C4 phase. So we just want to be really mindful that we're staying within a safe range of motion. You're not forcing anything. We're not using weights to force anything if you're fused thoracically. Again, kind of listening to your body, staying out of pain, and not pushing past that end range of motion that you feel. Like when you turn your head and you feel like you can't turn it anymore, don't force it anymore. And then lastly, whiplash consideration. So as I mentioned, no matter the level of your injury, there's a good chance that there was some kind of a whiplash sensation that happened in your neck. And if there wasn't, for those of you that are here with other disabilities, TBIs, concussions, that sort of a thing, this is also a consideration. So, this kind of neck strengthening, we definitely don't want to do when we're in that acute phase of whatever the injury was, whether it's spinal cord injury or something else. But we also want to be aware that even when something happened in the past, there can still be parts of your neck that are holding on for dear life, stabilizing you, which is good. It's protecting, but just things to keep in mind. The nature of your injury or whatever happened to your neck, your spine. Are there considerations we need to take into account there? And how is that maybe affecting your visual and your vestibular system? Because those always go hand in hand. You won't have some kind of a neck injury without those two systems being affected. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a visual, and we're going to pop over to my anatomy app in a second here, but I just wanted to give you a visual. So right now we're looking at the front of the neck. You see the breathing tube in the front. The blue lines are the veins. The red lines are the arteries. The yellow lines are the veins. And I don't think they have the lymph system here. Yeah. So you just can see how many structures we have running through that area. So again, not only is it important to be able to mobilize the neck if that mobilization is accessible for you, but it's important to strengthen that neck to protect these structures and to create space for these structures. That's really important. Okay, so we are going to pop over to my anatomy app here. So bear with me as this loads. All right. So again, we are looking at the front of the neck here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay. So part of what I'm going to be talking about today is these deep neck flexors. And let me see if I can, I'm just going to point these out now. I'm just going to highlight these now. Notice that this muscle is sitting right in front of your cervical vertebra. Okay, so those 7 bones you have in front. Those are going to be really important when we start talking about deep neck flexion being a cervical nod and a cervical curl. So that's basically kind of like you're trying to give yourself a double chin. So as we start to layer on, move this out of the way here. Okay, as we start to layer on some muscles, oops. And then I'm going to start to layer on the arteries. Those are the red lines, the veins, the nerves. She starts to look a little bit like a Christmas tree. I'm going to put in the lymph system, which is the green lines. And you see, again, just how many structures we have running through the neck here. Okay, so I'm just going to rotate you around to the back so you can really see what's going on. Really just wanted to give you a nice view of how many tubes, arteries, veins, nerves we have running through this area. Another muscle I want to point out, I'm going to get rid of these again, is one of your biggest neck muscles, your sternocleidomastoid. Again, I'm going to talk about that later, especially when we get into the movement portion, but it's that big muscle when you turn your head that kind of pops out forward, and you can probably even feel it on yourself if you are able to turn your head side to side. And you can just do that. You can even follow that muscle. It goes all the way up behind your ear, down onto your sternum. Another muscle we're going to talk about later, let's see if I can peel these away. Okay, is your scalene. So again, that's the one that's highlighted there. I know that's kind of hard to see. There we go. This is a really important muscle. So for those of you that find yourself to be neck breathers, this muscle most likely is very shortened and very tight on you because you're using it. We call this secondary respiratory muscle. Your diaphragm is your primary breathing muscle. That's really the muscle we want to use to breathe, especially to do that nice belly breathing. But when we start to breathe using our neck, this muscle here gets really tight and short. And if you've ever gotten a neck massage anywhere on the sides of your necks, this area, again, is most likely very tender for you. Okay, we're going to pop back to presentation here. Great. Okay, so what is correct neck posture? If you've been coming to these presentations, you're going to start to notice a lot of common themes here. So first, we're working on your seated posture. Before we can even really talk about the neck, of course, we're talking about the neck, and it's always good to work on whatever you have accessibility to. But if we're in a slumped over position, if our back is rounded, if our tail is tucked under us, then our neck is going to be compensated. So this house you see on the left If remember, your pelvis is like the foundation of the house. If that foundation is crooked, everything going up from there is going to have to be crooked as well. So if you've got a hiked hip and maybe a rotated spine, and now I have to adjust my head and my neck to compensate for my off foundation of my house being my pelvis. So you'll see here, and you might also recognize this picture. This is the first step. So we're trying to come from that tail tuck, that posterior pelvic position, more into a neutral pelvis where we're sitting right on top of our sit bones. If you want more on posture, I did a session on it. I think it was either October, November of last year. My colleague Stephanie did a session on it. So you can definitely check those out and look into that. Okay, so now getting a little bit more into this neck posture. So you'll see this woman, and I'm going to go to another photo after, but you see how when that head starts to creep forward, the back of it compensates everything else. She has to tilt her chin up. The back of her neck gets compressed. The front of her neck becomes elongated. Okay, so, oh, you know what? I don't know where that slide went. We're going to go back to the previous slide, and that other slide might pop up in a sec. I don't know what happened there. It might have skipped. Okay, so looking at me now in case you're looking at the presentation. So rounded shoulders, and I've got a long neck, and I'm compressing all of the musculature and fascia and tissue back here. Correct neck posture means we're coming into a neutral-ish pelvis. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be close. We're coming into more of a neutral spine. And I want your ear to be somewhat in alignment with the middle of your shoulder. So kind of in alignment with your upper arm bone if your arms were relaxed down at your side. So not here, but here. This is called a head ramp. I'm taking my two fingers and I'm pulling my chin in, giving myself just a slight double chin so that the back of my neck now has space, remember, for all of those important tubes. And the front of my neck, those deep neck flexors are working so that we can open up the back of the neck, and that head and the nerves and everything in there can come a little bit more in alignment, stacked over your rib cage, stacked over your pelvis. So I would actually say that this, the photo of the woman, I would even say she could pull her head back a little bit more. You see how if you dropped a plumb line down from her ear, it's a little bit in front of her shoulders. So she could actually tuck her head back a little bit more. Okay. So how does the neck help with balance? Like I mentioned in the beginning. So one of my other workshops, I talked a lot about the motor development stages of the baby. Again, if that is new information to you, feel free to check that out. But one of the first things that a baby learns to control in that 0 to 2 month range is how to control their head. So when they're on their back, they learn to lift their head up. And when they're on their belly, instead of doing a face plant into the carpet, they learn to lift their head up and they prop themselves up and they learn to look around. So you'll see that when a baby is kind of figuring this out and their head slumps to one side, or maybe they're trying to roll over, the weight of their head brings them into that position for better or for worse. Okay, so kind of similar when we're trying to retrain our neck after a spinal cord injury. So you might have experienced this, or you've seen folks where, like in this photo, they're trying to do a transfer. And this is one of my clients, Cynthia, in this photo. And she's pushing it down with her arms, but she's also using the weight of her head to lean forward and then to help scoot her hips over to the side. So is this a cheating mechanism or is this a brilliant adaptation? I would argue it's both. We need to use the weight of our head and our head neck control in order to connect to the rest of our body. So this is the first step. This head neck control, as we see with babies, is the first motor development stage and the first thing that we need to regain control of after an injury. Okay. How does the neck affect vision, nerves, and fascia being connective tissue going down the whole backside of the body? So we have these 8, and I just love the formation of these 8 muscles on the back of the neck. I just think they're so pretty. So you've got these 8 muscles on the back of the neck. They are less about helping you with extending the head, meaning lifting the head, and they are more about helping you with proprioception and stabilizing your head so that your eyes can do the job they need to do. So these are small muscles, but they're highly innervated. In fact, they're so innervated that we have 36 times the amount of proprioceptors in these muscles than we do in our glutes. 36 times the amount for these tiny little muscles. So again, these muscles are really more about the sensory system as opposed to anything else. So let's just do an experiment here, because you you might be able to feel these. They can be tricky to get just right, but I'm going to have you place your hands right under the base of your skull. So kind of maybe right above your hairline, right at the base of the skull. You can use your knuckles, you can use your fingertips. I don't want you to press too hard. I want you to come into a seated upright position as much as you can. And we're going to start by closing the eyes. And with the eyes closed, I want you to dart the eyes back left to right, really quickly. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Keeping the eyes closed as quick as you can. Hopefully you can feel these muscles working. It's okay if you can't. Sometimes the hand position is a little off. And if you can't feel them, try something else. Try moving your eyes up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Again, eyes are closed, but your eyes are moving under your eyelids. And can you feel those muscles moving? So that's the area that I'm talking about there. Another really cool connection with this is these muscles are called your suboccipital muscles. Within the past like 10 to 15 years, anatomists have found that there's actually a connection from these muscles to the outermost membrane that surrounds your brain and your spinal cord. Okay, why is this important? Well, it's important because it's your spinal cord and it's affecting all of the nerves. So if something is off, tight, holding on, maybe slightly in spasm, not able to relax, if something like that is going on with these muscles, it can not only affect the head and the neck, but it can affect the whole nervous system, and especially your back line, being the line all the way from your eyebrows, you're going to see a photo of this soon, back over the head, connecting all the way down through the bottoms of your feet. In fact, they've even done some studies showing that if you release this area, you actually gain more lengthening, more mobility in your hamstrings. Not super important for this matter, but just to let you know that this area is important. It helps with vision and it affects the connective tissue, especially going down through your back line. It can also be affected by stress and headaches. And we're going to talk about how we can safely release these muscles and give them a little bit of love in a later workshop. I'm doing a whole nother workshop on self-release techniques, but for the interest of time, we're gonna skip that for today. Okay, so what's the core again? So let's bring these two together. So just as a reminder, for those of you that took my core workshop last month, the core is your deepest layer of muscles that is surrounding your organs. It's not the typical six-pack abs, beach body that we're thinking of. I hate that imagery. I hate that use of the word core. I use it a little bit differently, and the folks in my industry do as well. So you'll see that there's four main parts to the core. We've got your pelvic floor sitting on the bottom that sits like a nice bowl holding in all your organs. We've got your transverse abdominis in the front that sits like a corset muscle on the front of your body. We can access this muscle using our exhale. And again, more on that in my prior workshop if you're interested in that. We've got your deepest back muscles being your multifidi that line your spine on either side, really deep to what you're feeling if you're feeling your back right now. And then we've got the lovely diaphragm on the top. Remember, the diaphragm and the pelvic floor, with each breath, they work like a jellyfish, like a pump. They go down with your inhale, they come up with your exhale. Okay, so how do we connect these two things? All right, myofascial meridians, my favorite. Again, I'm going to do a whole nother workshop on just myofascial meridians, but let's talk about this. And you're probably going to recognize this from my prior workshops as well. Okay, what the hell are myofascial meridians? So these are, instead of thinking of muscles and the parts of our body as separate from each other, like this is my arm, this is my bicep, this is my chest. This is a way of thinking about it, how it's all connected. So myofascial just means a connection of the muscles and the connective tissue and the nerves and everything else going on in there. So we find that we have these patterns, these meridians going through the body where we can use what you have access to. So let's say you've got access to your lats and maybe your shoulders and your arms. How can we use that connection to access your deep core or your abdominals? Well, one of these lines, looking at that spiral line, we can access those obliques, which creates that X in the front of the body, if we use our lats and our shoulder muscles a little bit. So we're basically using these meridians to use the connection, the engagement, the muscles that you currently have in order to connect to the parts of your body that you don't currently have a connection to, that are hard to engage, that are hard to feel, that are hard to sense. Okay, let's relate this back to the neck. So that far left photo, the deep front line, remember when I was on that anatomy app and I was talking about your deep neck flexors, those ones that lie right against the front of your vertebra. Those are responsible for that giving yourself the double chin. Notice how in that photo on the far left, you've got a fascial connection going all the way from the floor of your mouth down through your diaphragm, down through your pelvic floor, the insides of your thighs, and all the way down and out through your legs. So one way to access your deep core, that previous slide, is to start with activating and strengthening your deep neck flexors. We're going to do that in the movement portion, but I just wanted to make that connection for you. So deep neck flexors are connected to that deep core unit. The other big part we're going to be looking at is your, I'm just going to abbreviate it, the sternocleidomastoid, your SCM. Okay, it's this nice diagonal muscle. You have it on either side of the neck. So you'll notice in, let me make sure I'm getting this right, your superficial front line. So that third photo from the right, there's a fascial connection going from those two muscles, your SCM, down into your more superficial abdominal muscles. Those are more of your six-pack abs you're looking for, out through the quads and down the front of the legs. So again, how can we maybe connect to the more superficial abdominal muscles? We're going to use that SCM for, again, with some neck flexion, some neck stabilizing, and that kind of work. You'll also see that the SCM is also part of something called the lateral line in that very far photo to the right. And that is connecting down through the side of your body, through all of the obliques on the side of your torso. So again, we're going to use that SCM to help connect to those more superficial abdominal muscles by doing some of these neck movements that will strengthen and activate your SCM. Okay. Okay, just making sure I didn't miss anything here. Okay, so as a summary, and then we're going to jump into the movement portion. How do we strengthen and mobilize the neck? First and foremost, and you're always going to hear me say this, is how can you find the most neutral alignment in your body? We're not going for perfect, but we're going to use the aid of props. Can you put a wedge under your sit bones? Can you put a towel behind your back? Can you have somebody hold your shoulders while you're doing these exercises? So how can we get the closest to neutral before we start working on some of these neck exercises? The second one is breath. So as I mentioned, you've got your scalenes. And for those of you that are neck breathers, where you're using the scalenes to assist you in breath, how can we retrain those muscles? How can we give those muscles a vacation? Let them go on break for a little bit. And can we do more belly breathing? Okay, where your inhale, instead of inhaling into your neck and your chest, can we inhale into your low belly without moving your neck and your chest? And then can we exhale? Yes, I know. Easier said than done, right? Especially when there's, for those of you that maybe have a higher level spinal cord injury. However, this is very possible to retrain. We can do this through belly breathing, either seated up or on our back. I talk about this more in the very first lecture I did, so check that out if you want to kind of dive more into the breath world. And we do this by letting these muscles relax, easier in a supine position, meaning you're on your back. And it doesn't happen overnight. Getting the diaphragm to engage with our inhale and our exhale takes a lot of breath work and breath practice. Okay, and then eye movements. And we're going to do some eye movements just like we did with those back and forth as you were feeling your suboccipitals. And then, of course, some head and neck stabilization. Those are going to be more of the bigger movements we're going to do with your neck. And for those of you where it's safe and it's accessible, more of a neck range of motion. So head tilts, head rotations, and all of that. Gosh, I feel like I lost a slide in here. That's okay, though. I think you get the gist of it. Great. Okay, this slide is your money slide. So if you want to snap a photo of this, of course, you're going to get a copy of the presentation. But these are the movements that we're going to be doing. We're going to start with doing some basic movements that I think are pretty accessible for all levels of injury. I'm going to show you what is suitable if you've got hardware or fusions, and then I'll show you some exercises, movements, mobilizations to do if you've got a lumbar or thoracic spinal cord injury. Great. So let me make sure I'm good here. Make sure that's it. Yes. Okay, great. Let's move. Okay. So if you're not down on the floor, or not down on the floor, if you're not in a position where you'd like to move either seated upright or with an assistance, some assistance, go ahead and grab that now. I'm just gonna exit out of this and make sure I don't miss any exercises here. Okay, great. Okay, so we're just gonna start with just some simple belly breathing. All right, so coming to, again, as much of an upright, neutral pelvis, neutral spine position as you can, putting both hands on the low belly. Actually, let's do this. One hand on the chest, one hand on the low belly. Close your eyes if that feels more comfortable for you. And let your hands guide your breath here. So as you inhale, trying to direct that breath into your bottom hand. So you'll feel the belly push into your hand. And as you exhale, you'll feel the belly drift away from your hand. And I just want you to stay with that for a few breaths. And if you're having a hard time visualizing that or feeling that, I like to imagine like I'm filling up a vase of water. So that water fills from the bottom up. That's what we want to do with our breath here. Inhaling into the low belly. And then exhaling, and that low belly drifts away. Just take one more breath there. Inhale into the low belly. And then exhale, the belly drifts away. Okay. Again, something you can work on for a full 20 minutes, just belly breathing. But we're going to keep moving here. So second thing is working on this head ramping. Let me position myself so you can see me here. All right. So we're gonna kind of pretend like we're a pigeon here. So I'm gonna have you place, if you can, your 2 fingers on your chin or your knuckles on your chin. And I just want you to find that pigeon head movement, gliding the head forward, gliding the head back. Remember, we're staying out of pain and we're staying within your range of motion. So for those of you that have hardware in your neck, the movement might be a little smaller, and that's totally fine. The point of this, though, so I want you to stick your neck out, and then I want you to push your chin back in, and I want you to hold this here. And I want you to feel like you are almost giving yourself 3 to 8 double chins, 3 minimum, okay? Don't worry, nobody can see you, it's totally fine. Give yourself those double chins, and notice if you feel any of these deep neck muscles working for you. Hold that position, hold, hold, hold. Where is your tongue right now? Okay. Good, what we call resting oral posture is where your tongue is very lightly pressing on the roof of your mouth, just behind your front teeth, just behind your front teeth. So with your mouth closed, if you're able to breathe through your nose with your mouth closed, can you place that tongue on the roof of your mouth? Okay, so that's what we call good resting oral posture. That's important for a whole lot of reasons I could do a whole lecture on if I wanted to. But for the purposes of this, the reason we're doing that is to start getting that deep neck flexor connection. When that tongue is pressing against the roof of the mouth, we are already starting to use this whole area being the floor of your mouth. Okay, so just holding that, noticing what that feels like for you. Does it feel funny? Does it feel comfortable? Does it feel soothing? A lot of people find having the tongue up is soothing because there's a vagus nerve drops down and it's a whole thing. Okay, so holding that position now. So you're in a really good, you're holding that really nice head and neck posture. Keeping the head totally steady, I'm going to have you look at something on the left side of the room. Don't move your head. Keep that nose pointing forward. And then I'm going to have you dart your eyes to something on the right side of the room. And I want your eyes to go quickly, left, right, left, right, left, right, making sure that you are focusing on that one object before switching to the other object. So each object comes into clarity and then you switch to the other. And you're just moving your eyes quickly back and forth. And I'm just going to watch people here. This is super accessible. This helps calm the nervous system. And it helps warm up the eyes. I did a whole workshop on the visual system. So if you're more interested in more of these eye movements, you can check out that workshop also. Pause and then go on and do the same thing up and down, looking at something on the ceiling, floor, ceiling, floor, ceiling, floor, and going up and down. Okay, so we've got the neck in a good position. We're moving the eyes, which is suboccipital muscles work for us. And it's retraining that system in case anything is slightly off. Okay, oops, good, and relax. Okay, so moving more, I'm going to stay in a seated position. Moving more towards, so folks with a cervical spinal cord injury that have a fusion and or hardware in their neck. Okay, so we're going to move more a little bit into the stability, strengthening, and mobility part here. So a simple way to start this, whether you're in your chair or you're on the floor or you're seated in your bed, whatever you're doing, you're holding that nice, make sure I'm in screen here. Okay, you're holding that chin tuck, that nice aligned head and neck posture. You can use your hands on your lap to support you. Okay, if you need here. And we're just going to do a lean forward. The compensation I typically see is this. And then when folks are trying to pull themselves back, they use the weight of their head, like we talked about earlier, to pull themselves back up. Okay. That's okay when we need to quickly do something, but how can we make this and that everyday movement that you might be doing often more of an exercise, and do it with a little bit more mindfulness? The chin is tucked in, meaning you're using those deep neck flexors, and you're leaning, make sure I'm doing this right if I'm demonstrating, you're leaning forward, noticing I'm keeping the back of my neck really long here. My chin is tucked in and nothing changes. So if you were squeezing like a pomegranate, not a pomegranate, oh my gosh, an apple or something between your neck and your chin, nothing would move in your neck. In fact, that's a good exercise too if you have a small squishy ball, or you could even use your fist and kind of pressing your chin lightly down into your fist as you do that movement, so that you're not cheating and you feel those deep neck flexors working for you. Okay, so we can take that, make sure I'm not missing anything. Yeah, you have another option here. I'm going to give you this option. For those of you that don't have a seat back behind you, so if you're on the floor, something like that, you also have another option. So that's working deep neck flexors and back of the neck. Now, if we just reverse that and do kind of like a Frankenstein lean back, you might need some support here. We're working the opposite. So you'll find that as you start to lean back, you can even feel using your fingers how your deep neck flexors and your SCM, these big side muscles, are helping to hold your head up. It might not take much. This is something you can work on when you're getting up out of bed in the morning, and it's something you can work on when you go to bed at night, or if you're on the floor or transferring to a different kind of chair or couch. You're doing the same idea where we're keeping that head and neck really stable, but we're strengthening all of the areas we need to strengthen for good neck posture, neck mobility. Okay. I'm gonna carry you all down with me to the floor. So many wires. Let's do this. Okay. Okay, great. Nice and close and comfy. Okay, so you're getting out of bed in the morning, whatever this might look like for you. I'm going to talk about what a cervical nod, cervical curl might look like. This goes for, I'm going to start with folks who maybe have fusion, and then if you don't have a fusion or hardware, I'm going to show you how you can incorporate some more neck flexion into that. So I want you, I'm going to take this off for a sec. Oops. I want you to take your fingers or take your knuckles right under your, right behind your ears. And for those of you that are seated, I want you to nod your head like you're saying yes to somebody. And if you're lying down, you can do that a little bit too, like you're saying yes to somebody. This directly deep to your two fingers is where that movement is happening, that deep neck flexion. Notice when you do that. So I want you to tuck your chin in, give yourself at least 3 to 8 double chins, okay? That's what we call your cervical nod. That's your deep neck flexors working for you. You're then going to find your cervical curl. I want you to imagine that somebody were pulling the top of your head, trying to keep the back of your neck as long as you can. So like if you had a string out through the top of your head. Sorry, this is where adding flexion. I'm going to give a modification for those with hardware infusions. Okay, so you're lifting your head up, coming up as high as you can. Shoulders might come off the floor. It's okay if they don't. And then you're just slowly unraveling that motion, okay? Notice I'm not doing this, okay? I'm not leading with my chin. I'm actually leading with my eyes. The eyes are the first thing to look down the cheeks. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Eyes are the first thing. So I want you to look like almost like you're trying to look at your legs or something on the floor by your feet. You tuck your chin in, cervical nod, cervical curl, and then you undo that. This is not an easy exercise. Okay, it takes practice, it takes work, and it might look like a small movement, but I just did 2 repetitions and I can feel all of this right now. Okay, so really working on those deep neck flexors. For those of you, let me come back down to the floor. For those of you with hardware, instead of coming into flexion, you're just gonna find a head lift, okay? So you're gonna find as much of a cervical nod as you can. This cervical nod happens really, really high in your vertebra, C1, C2. So hopefully this is not too much of an issue, fusion or hardware wise. So you find that double chin, and then you're just gonna lift the head as much as you can off of the pillow, and you're holding and you're stabilizing and you're trying to keep, having a hard time here talking and doing this, you're trying to keep the chin tucked in as you lift that head off. Okay, so finding a lift, maybe holding for 5 to 10 seconds, and then finding that lower coming back down. Those are for folks who've got fusion or hardware in their neck. Okay, so I'm going to give you another option here. For those of you that have one of these squishy balls, so I'm holding up just like a blue 7 or so inch inflatable ball. Oh, you know what? Sorry, I missed one. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna come back to the squishy ball. Don't worry. Okay. Again, for folks that have fusion hardware, we're now going to turn that stabilization into a sideline position, working more of your SCM. Neck flexors are still working because you're still finding that head ramping position. Okay, so imagine I would have a pillow here. I'm just going to use my hand as a pillow, hoping that this is easy to see. And you're just going to find that head ramping. Your eyes are facing forward. Remember, you can do this in the bed also. Eyes are forward, head is nice and square. So you're not tilted, you're not tucking the chin up. You're finding that nice head ramp position. And then all you're going to do is lift and float the head up. The tendency here is going to be to jut that chin forward. You can always keep those fingers on that area and just hold here. For those of you that maybe do some side lying, hang on, I'm going to turn the light on. Give me one sec. Okay, for those of you that do some side lying work, like I've showed you in other presentations, where you're moving an arm, you're pulling something, maybe you have a weight and you're doing some internal, external rotation. This is an awesome place to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and just find that head hover. So we're working all the way through here as we're doing arm movements, or even maybe as we're working on the obliques on that side. Because remember, this connects fascially down into your obliques on the side of your body, okay? So you're just finding that head hover and you're multitasking here. Okay. Great, just making sure I'm not missing anything for folks with hardware. So you've got a few really easy wins. You've got the leaning forward, leaning back. You've got the head lifts lying on your back, and you've got the head lifts lying on your side. So I'm going to show you, so moving more to, and this is still going to be applicable for folks who have a cervical spinal cord injury. I just want you to be more mindful of your hardware, but everything I'm going to say moving forward still applies to you. just listen to your body, know your end range of motion. Kicking my headphones under my couch here. Okay, so next we're gonna work through all of the movements of the neck. This is more neck mobility. If you're finding you have a stiff neck, if you're finding tightness that you overcompensate, maybe the shoulders are shrugging up, this is for you. This is also for anybody who doesn't have hardware in here, for anyone who finds themselves in front of a computer all day. If you've had past head neck injuries, this is all safe and accessible for you. So we're just going to start with flexion extension. So just like I was doing a little bit ago, tilting the head up, and if it helps you, keep your hands on that area just behind your ears. That's your axes that we're moving from. You're giving yourself a double chin. Sorry, I'll keep my elbows out. And then you're lifting and you're looking up. Notice I'm not doing this. Okay, we don't want to dump that neck extension. It's not good for the neck. It's not good for the shoulders. It's just a tilt. It's just an extension of the neck. We're not overdoing it. And then you're pulling that chin back in. Notice I'm not doing this. Okay, I'm not arcing that chin down. I'm rotating around my two fingers, or I should say I'm flexing around my two fingers, and I'm already feeling the work in through, again, my deep neck flexors there. So that's an easy one that you can do seated upright. Notice that movement is exactly what I did on the floor when I was peeling my head off the floor. It's the same movement. We're just doing it in an upright position. Okay, next movement. We're almost done. Lateral flexion. Okay, roll the shoulders down and back. Tilt your left ear to your left shoulder. Notice I didn't say lift your left shoulder. Okay, so you're just lowering that ear to the shoulder. Keep your collarbones open. Keep your shoulders down and back. So we're keeping this whole area open. Remember all of the tubes running through there. Finding a nice stretch through there. And then laterally tilting your head to the other side. Notice which side for you is stickier. For most people, there's going to be a side where you're like, oh, yeah, this side doesn't go quite as far as my other side. Just a good thing to notice. Maybe you spend some extra time opening that up. This doesn't have to be anything really aggressive. Remember when you start to feel that stretch, so you're thinking of reaching your shoulder blades like I'm reaching my hands down for the floor. It doesn't take much to open that neck and feel that stretch. Rotation, okay. Your chest and your ribs and everything are going to stay facing forward. Find your head ramp. So chin is in, you've got that good neck posture. And I want you to think more of pointing through the nose. Oftentimes what I see when people rotate their heads is their chin kind of goes up. Can you keep that nose? So it almost helps if you pretend like you're resting your head on your hands here, and you're rotating your head, and that chin is just gliding over your hands. Or I like to think of it like I'm directing somebody with my nose. Go that way. Go that way, okay? Just so that we're not compensating, we're not tilting the head, and we're not getting wonky in that area. So we're keeping everything really level as we find that rotation. As you do that rotation, again, you're just noticing, is one side harder to rotate towards the other? And maybe spending some extra time with those. Okay, translation, these are getting harder. Keeping your chin and your floor of the mouth parallel with the floor. You're gonna pretend like you're doing that cool 90s dance move. Oh yeah. And you're just translating the head from one side to the next. And again, if it helps you to have this like little floorboard, put some music on. Okay, so again, just mobilizing this comes a little bit higher up in the neck. I'm actually just gonna watch people do this one. This one is a harder movement to coordinate. And noticing and doing this in front of a mirror, are you tilting the head? Are you rotating the head? Can you just get that lateral translation? Yes, I love it. I got some floorboards. Hang on, for the people doing floorboards, just a note, make sure you're not jutting your chin out. So bring that chin back in for the floorboard. Yeah, that looks better. Okay, I think we just have a couple more. We did the head ramps. Last one for the neck mobilization is figure eights. So again, I want you thinking of doing this from your nose. Can you draw a big figure eight, a horizontal figure eight, like an infinity sign, with your nose? So if your nose had a paintbrush on it, how big of a figure eight could that paintbrush paint? Yeah, I'm just gonna watch people here. For those of you with hardware fusions, you're just feeling into it. You're not pushing into pain. You're not pushing past that end range. Yeah, and that looks really good. Okay, we have one more thing. Coming back down to the floor, and then I'll take questions. So bringing this neck mobility, oh gosh, two more things. Okay, I'll hurry. I forgot about this one. This is a good one. Grabbing the squishy ball. If you're doing these neck movements in bed, this squishy ball is really nice. Really anything filled with air. I can do these side to side. I can do the figure eights. I can do my flexion and extension. Okay, so I can do all of these nice movements. But when you're doing these on the back and you've got a pillow under you, the pillow gets stuck, your hair can get stuck, it gets awkward. This is a really nice way to mobilize your neck with as much freedom as possible. These are $8 on Amazon, and they're really nice. You can use them for the head and neck, and you can use them for some prone work. I'm gonna move you all back a little bit more. Okay, so for those of you that can get down onto your stomach, you're gonna position this ball so it's right about at your chest, and you might need to play. If you need more support, it could be higher. If you think you can hold the head up and you've got yourself, you can position that ball a little lower. And if you don't need the ball at all, then you don't need the ball at all. I'm just gonna leave it in. Okay. Make sure I've got a good angle here. Oh, the wires are dragging with me. Great. Okay. So again, what am I looking for? We've got elbows under the shoulders. So we're actually working a little bit on scapular stability. Check out my shoulder workshop if you want more info, more exercises on how to strengthen and mobilize your shoulders. But now we're going to focus on the neck. So you're pressing away from the ground. We're finding that same deep neck flexion, and I'm pulling my head back. So we're not here. This is the tendency. This is where my clients want to be when we do work on our bellies, but we're here. My eyes are kind of gazing above my fingertips. My back of the neck is kind of pointed up at the ceiling, and I'm tucking my chin in. We can do all of the same movements we just did in this prone position. Notice that this is just a more extreme angle of my seated tilted forward that I was showing you just like 15 minutes ago. So now we're just even more sloped forward, so the neck has to work a little bit harder. You can hold this position. You can find that same flexion and extension. Remember to keep the shoulders down and back here to create as much space for the neck as possible. You can find that rotation. Oh, let me adjust my neck. So pointing with my nose to the left, pointing with my nose to the right. and really trying to keep that space open. I can do the figure eights. I could even try to do some chest lifts where I'm either pressing into the ground and I'm lifting everything, and then I'm lowering everything. I'm lifting everything, and then I'm lowering. If you want to take that one step further, if you're able to, you can even see, can you float the arms? So this is that ready head position. You can have, scoot in a little bit, you can rest your forehead on both hands, and maybe this is where you start with this ready head position. So I'm doing this without the ball here. You can add some of that flexion extension or some of that rotation. But maybe you find you can start to lift into more of a chest lift. So now we're really engaging the whole back line. That gets a little bit more advanced, but the main point is what your neck looks like and how the areas that we're strengthening, and how those areas, as we do the side lie, as we do the seated upright, it's all connected to the core. And you'll start to find that that core connection is hopefully becoming a little bit stronger. Can you feel more sensations? Can you start to feel these upper abdominals, maybe the deeper core with your breath, with your exhale? So by starting with the neck, if you're having a hard time connecting to the abdominals and the core, starting with your neck can be a really accessible way. And you'll notice over time, especially with the ones where you're on your back, as you lift your head up, your head won't be able to lift without this engagement. So just noticing, you can even put your hands on your belly. Do I feel this engagement? What if I tuck my chin in more? What if I have somebody hold some of the weight of my head and I hold the rest of my head? Okay, so you can kind of explore what works best for you and what allows you to get the best connection. Okay, I'm sorry I went over. I think I hit everything on that slide. Thank you so much for joining tonight, everybody. I'll take some questions. Oh, is Franklin here? Oh, there you are. Oh, Franklin, I think you're muted.
All right. So can I send you the bill for all the chin surgeries that I'm going to have to get after tonight? The chin removal surgeries?
Yes.
All right. We have a few questions. Thanks so much, Rachel. And you are uniquely qualified to answer this first one. Is it dangerous to do a really hard neck massage?
Oh, yes. Gosh, I love these questions because they always bring up the one thing I forget in the presentation. That's a really good point. When I would say this, if anybody is working on your neck massage wise, and this is super, super important, especially for those of you with cervical spinal cord injuries, remember that your neck is tight for a reason. Your neck is holding on to a lot. It's helping you breathe. It's helping you transfer. It's helping you move. It's helping you push your chair. It's helping you do a lot of things. So that tightness or shortness of the muscles is really just a way for your neck to find more stability that maybe the muscles can't voluntarily offer your body. So what I would say is if you have somebody working on your neck, make sure, especially for those of you with cervical spinal cord injuries, make sure that they know what they're doing. Make sure they're qualified. Hopefully they've worked with somebody with a spinal cord injury before. They know the structures in there. They know where the nerves are. They know where the artery, they know hardware infusions and that whole world. If it's light massage, if you're, just kind of working a little bit on the SCM, or you're working a little bit on the scalenes, which is just tucked behind and deep to the SCM, again, that's okay. And having like a loved one or a caretaker or someone doing that light massage is fine. But if anything hurt, this is like really, really a big asterisk. The whole phrase, no pain, no gain, is such bullshit. I just don't go by it. Our tissue doesn't change by hard massage and hard impact. Our tissues are kind of like a turtle. Like we have to coax the turtle out. If we try poking the turtle is just going to retract into its shell. This is especially true with the neck. So just making sure that it's either very light massage and or the person really knows what they're doing. Because if we all of a sudden work all of that tightness out of your neck, you're going to get up from that massage and be like, oh my God, my head feels like it's 45 pounds. And it can actually throw things off. And I've seen injuries come after a massage when someone went too hard and didn't know what they were doing. So yeah, that's really important.
So sounds like stay away from all those mall massage tables, right?
Yeah. If there's any pain or if it's uncomfortable, stay away from it.
Right. I know the ball that you were using, you said it's 7 inches. One of the questions is, what is the actual name of that ball, or how would they look it up? Or
Yes. This is, oh, I was going to say Franklin. Just kidding. This is, it's Source Pro Fitness. And I have a link to this on my website. By the way, I wrote all of the letters and numbers on it. That's more of a visual thing.
okay.
Pro Source Fitness. If you type in, I think it's like a 7 to 12-inch inflatable ball into Amazon, you can't really go wrong. The Franklin ball is really good. I think the Franklin ball is the link that I have on my website. Franklin, I can even send that to you to include in the email tomorrow.
Yeah. And of course, that ball was named after me, everyone.
Cool.
Okay, next question.
Totally.
An individual with a C3 to T1, 3.5 years post-injury, lacks rotational stability or rotational mobility. And they want to know how do you differentiate between strength versus flexibility when it comes to rotation of the neck?
Yeah, so when I say, and these are, and I don't know if this is almost more semantics, but the language that I've used throughout this presentation and I always use is when I'm talking about stability or strength, I'm talking about that area to be able to stabilize as something else is moving. So like, for example, neck stability, if I hold my head here, and you can actually try this with me, and you push your head into your forehead, you'll feel these front muscles light up. If you press into the side of your head, you'll feel the side muscle light up. All of this is neck stabilization. And I mean, it's all kind of neck strengthening, but this is working on stabilizing the neck. When I was talking about leaning forward, leaning back, doing all of that, or just lifting the head off of the floor, that's neck stability. Neck mobility and or flexibility is the neck's ability to move through a certain range of motion, whether that's rotation, flexion, extension, lateral translation, and whatnot. So, oh God, I'm getting so off track. So sorry. The question, typical. The question was, what's the difference between
rotate? Here, hold on a second. Sorry. What's the difference between flexibility in terms of rotation, sort of strength versus flexibility in terms of rotation?
Yeah. So
how do you differentiate between the two?
Yeah. So when we're looking at your ability to rotate the head to one side, I'm not really calling that strength. I'm calling that mobility. I'm calling that mobility with cervical rotation. If you're asking like, how do I get more cervical rotation? Well, one thing I would say, especially if you're fused C3 to T1, that's where this part comes in of don't force it. Even if you're like, well, one side goes better than the other, depending on your fusion and your hardware, it's not worth forcing. You're going to dump that load into C2, C1, maybe a little bit of C3. So don't force it, but it doesn't mean that you still can't get some rotation, even if it's on the smaller end. And it doesn't mean that doing some of the neck releases, which I'll teach in a later workshop, wouldn't be helpful. Doing some of the eye exercises wouldn't be helpful. And it also means that doing some of that neck strengthening, like you're lying on your side and you're lifting your head up, or even just some of those simple head pushes that I was just showing you, that will strengthen your neck. What will mobilize your neck is taking the neck through its full range of motion, but I wouldn't push that, especially if you're fused C3 to T1.
Okay, very good. Next question. Gentleman is going to be having surgery to stabilize the neck from C6 to T2, hopefully in about a year or so. But in the meantime, anything that you would suggest that he can do to strengthen or prepare his body to recover more quickly following the surgery?
Yeah, it's what we call prehab. Yes. So the stronger that you can get that neck and the more mobile that you can get that neck pre-surgery, the better. That being said, if you're getting that kind of surgery, I'm also assuming something is off there. So if there's any pain with any of these movements, of course, avoid them. Don't force your end range into any of these movements. But doing all of these, again, like the side lying one, doing some of the cervical nod, cervical curls where you're coming off of the ground. Remember, doing it from a horizontal position is going to be harder than doing it from a vertical position. So try doing those horizontally. You can even do them on an incline if you really wanted to make it hard. Yeah, and everything that I mentioned here, assuming you don't have fusions or hardware right now, doing those, 2 to 3 times a week, and just being really mindful of your head positioning. Yeah, but also if you're getting that kind of a surgery, I also don't know what's going on. So just listening to your body.
Okay, very good. You mentioned with the tilting of the head sort of side to side that oftentimes one side is less flexible than the other. Is that something that could be remedied or sort of addressed over the course of time? Or is that, do you think, has to do with the hardware or the fusion in the neck? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. If there's hardware infusions, it absolutely can have to do with that. So again, like, don't force it, don't go into pain. If you don't have hardware fusions, and for example, I definitely have a harder side of tilting towards, it is definitely not treatable, but it's definitely possible to work on and to improve. Doing that might look like, sure, some of those neck stretches, but it also is mobilizing the neck. You're trying to bring the neck through a full range of motion every day with some strengthening. It's kind of similar to what I said with some of the spinal mobility work and some of my prior workshops. The goal is just to move as much of the body as you can every single day. Mobilize the spine, mobilize the joints, do whatever that you can do, because that's what's going to keep not just your joints healthy, but your connective tissue, your muscles, your nerves, your arteries, all of the tubes, the lymph, everything you've got going on in your body. But so doing more of those, and with the strengthening that side, with some of the neck mobilizations, hopefully over time will give you more mobility and more strength in that area. Because remember, strength and mobility typically go hand in hand. When an area is tight or in spasm or holding on, like I mentioned in the neck, that means that structure is protecting something for whatever reason. So if we can, and it means that structure also, if it's tight, it's probably not very mobile, meaning it doesn't have a big range of motion. And it means I don't like to use the word weak, but I'm just going to use the word weak for lack of a better word. It's weak and it's tight. Okay, so those usually go hand in hand. We also see areas that are weak and long. Like, for example, when you've got bad posture, the areas in between your shoulder blades are lengthened and they're weak. Whereas the muscles in the back of your neck are shortened and weak. So just knowing that those two usually go hand in hand. Mobility comes with strength and strength comes with mobility. And it's important to work those two things together.
Okay, very good. Next question. I find that when my wheelchair is in tilt or recline for a period of time, when I come back up straight, my neck becomes stiff. Is that because a certain muscle is being flexed?
Yeah, and it would be interesting to notice the next time you do that, you tilt back in your chair, what is the position of your neck? Are you being supported properly? I mean, if you're tilting back in your chair to relieve pressure, to hang out, to watch a TV show, basically to relax, you want that area to be supported and you want it to be in good alignment. So when you tilt back, notice, maybe is your head tilted? Are you tilting? Are you favoring one of your eyes? This is a whole nother topic, but are you kind of tilting your head to one side? So either getting the feedback from somebody else or looking into a mirror if you can, and just seeing, okay, is my head and neck in good alignment and is it being supported? Or am I unconsciously trying to hold my neck up in some weird way? That's very minimal, but it's there. And now my neck feels kind of painful and stiff when I come up. So yeah, however, if you tilt back in that chair and you're doing neck exercises, your neck is going to be working. So it just kind of depends on the situation.
Okay. All right, next question. I have a feeling I'm going to pass out after I ask it. Your opinion on aggressive neck adjustment, twisting side to side. These people are brutal.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna kind of assume and jump in here if this isn't right, but that this person is maybe referencing like a chiropractor or a chiropractic move that they would do. Yeah. I
I
would
mean, in
say,
general, is that advisable
um,
to do any kind
yeah,
of aggressive stuff on the neck?
yeah, no, anything with the word aggressive is never advisable.
Okay.
No, I mean, that's a joke and not a joke. I would say that if you're going to someone, or if you yourself or you know someone that knows what they're doing and is doing neck adjustments on you, and you have a cervical spinal cord injury, all of the same things apply to what I said about the massage. Make sure they know what they're doing. Make sure you know what you're doing. There's trust there. That being said, I feel like unless going to the chiropractor is coinciding with movement therapy, a home exercise program, body awareness, mindfulness, all of those things, then chiropractor just alone kind of feels like to me a band-aid over a piece of glass in the foot. Like you go every week, someone does a neck adjustment and you go home and you don't do any movement or any exercise. Again, these are just assumptions, but I have had many clients that have done this, where they're just relying on the chiropractor to fix them. So chiropractors can be really good if it's with an exercise program, if there's trust and if everyone knows what they're doing, and if you're working towards fixing that problem. What is the root cause of the problem? Why are you going to the chiropractor? Is it because there's actually something off in your pelvis and your neck is kind of sitting funny? So maybe there needs to be work more with your seated posture, which will even out the neck, et cetera, et cetera. So like, what's the root cause? Is there a better way to address that? Are you using all of the tools that you have?
Okay. But do you think, can we establish that if you have a cervical injury and it's you have either fusion or hardware, that the words aggressive and adjustment on the neck should not go with those types of injuries?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Franklin, you cut out for the beginning of that
Yeah,
question.
I
Can you
said,
just repeat
is
that
it
one more
safe to
time?
assume that if you have sort of a neck fusion and hardware, that anything aggressive or the word adjustment on the neck should probably be avoided?
Yeah. 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 Sorry. The overall answer to that is yes. I would avoid that. Especially cervical spinal cord injuries, especially with hardware infusions in the neck. Yeah, there are people out there and there are chiropractors out there. And I have had a couple of clients that have tried that and it was okay. But what's the word? the the not the symptoms, oh, I'm losing my language, like the relief that they felt only lasted for 3 hours. And I said, 3 hours, seriously? Well, what's the point? if you have a spasm and it goes right back to her. Yeah. Anyway, long story short is yes, I would avoid any kind of an aggressive adjustment in the neck.
Okay. This next question involves the exercise moving eyes from side to side. The person says, I get a pulling in my neck. Is this normal? So on the exercise that included moving eyes from side to side.
Did you say a pooling of the neck?
No, yeah, I get a pulling, yeah, in my neck. So
Oh, like a muscle is pulling.
Yep.
Okay. Um, yeah, that's interesting. I'm curious. First off, are you in a good head neck position when you're doing that? Are you making sure that the head is steady as the eyes are moving? And is the pulling that you're feeling coming from those suboccipital muscles? Because remember, those muscles are working to stabilize your head as your eyes move. Um, if the pulling isn't painful and if you're just really tuned into these muscles working, that's totally fine. If something feels off for you, check your neck posture. And instead of jumping your eyes far from way over here to way over here, shorten that distance. So maybe your eyes are only jumping 2 to 3 feet apart if it's uncomfortable.
Okay. Last question. How do you feel about heat or weights on the shoulders for pain relief in the neck?
Yeah, feel really good about heat. Heat is a really good way to, especially with chronic areas, really the only places I use heat are the neck and the back. Um, the research on this fluctuates every 3 to 5 years. Ice heat, what works. For the neck, heat is always really good. It helps relax things, it helps relieve things, especially if they're tight and especially if they're in spasm.
So this was on the shoulders. She's asking
Oh,
about putting them on the shoulders for pain relief in the neck. So you put the heat or the weights on the shoulders for pain relief in the neck.
okay. Okay. Yeah, I would say again, like, if the heat is kind of draping over here, over the tops of the shoulders, that's fine. And that can also do the same thing of like letting everything just release and relax. I don't know about weights, putting weights on the shoulders. I haven't heard of that, and it sounds it I'm wondering if that's necessary. Is the heat just alone do it? And also being mindful that like if you're really putting a few pounds or something on each shoulders, that is lengthening the tissues in that area, which could actually be irritating them. We don't want to over lengthen areas that aren't going to be lengthened by just our normal body structures. So I would be wary of the weights on the shoulders. Heat, I think, is fine.
Okay. Is it typical or unusual to get dizzy with doing the eye exercises? That's one of the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. Anytime we work the visual system or the vestibular system, being your inner ear unit, helps you with proprioception balance. Anytime we're working those two systems, it is totally okay to experience dizziness. I sometimes feel a little nauseous. Sometimes my eyes get watery. Sometimes they get itchy. All of that is normal and okay and fine, but it means that you've hit your edge. That dizziness is an edge. So once you hit that edge, take a break, back off. You can close the eyes, which usually calms things down. You can grab some water, which usually helps. So yeah, that's fine, but it also just means you've hit your edge.
Okay. Thank you, Rachel. One question that was asked, all of Rachel's past presentations with us since middle of last year are on our YouTube channel. So you just go to YouTube and type in NorCal SCI and you'll see all of our presentations on there. And as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, we have been recording this thing, so all of you will have everything that you've been witnessing here tonight in your inboxes tomorrow so that you could refer to them, as well as share them with any sort of colleagues or caregivers or family members that might need to help you with some of these movement exercises. And I am especially thrilled that Rachel has agreed to do these classes with us every month for all of this year and hopefully well into the future as well. So thank you again, Rachel. Once again, thanks to the Reef Foundation for the funding of these programs. And thanks for everyone that hung in there. Rachel always has a lot of good stuff to share. And so thanks for hanging around, everyone. Thank you, Rachel, for all the time and all the commitment that you give towards bettering the lives of those with spinal cord injuries. So thank you. We're very much appreciative of that. Have a good night, everyone, and a good weekend as well. Take care.
All right, awesome. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.